Hello everybody and welcome back to Quarantine Kids Storytime. My name's Sascha Cooper and today I'm going to be continuing the story of the White Seal from the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. Now yesterday we saw, along with our hero of the White Seal, Kotick, some rather horrific hunting scenes, and now he's embarking upon an adventure to find a quieter island, but nobody's listening to him. Will people listen to him more as he discovers things along the way? Let's find out, shall we? That autumn, he left the beach as soon as he could and set off alone because of a notion in his bullet head. He was going to find Sea Cow, if there was such a person in the sea, and he was going to find a quiet island with good firm beaches for seals to live on, where men could not get at them. So he explored and explored by himself, from the North to the South Pacific, swimming as much as 300 miles in a day and a night. He met with more adventures than can be told, and narrowly escaped being caught by the basking shark, and the spotted shark, and the hammerhead, and he met all the untrustworthy ruffians that loaf up and down the seas, and the heavy polite fish, and the scarlet-spotted scallops that are moored in one place for hundreds of years and grow very proud of it. But he never met Sea Cow, and he never found an island that he could fancy. If the beach was good and hard, with a slope behind it for seals to play on, there was always the smoke of a whaler on the horizon, boiling down blubber, and Kotick knew what that meant, or else he could see that seals had once visited the island and been killed off, and Kotick knew that where men had come once, they would come again. He picked up with an old stumpy-tailed albatross who told him that Kerguelen Island was the very place for peace and quiet, and when Kotick went down there, he was all but smashed to pieces against some wicked black cliffs in a heavy sleet storm with lightning and thunder. Yet, as he pulled out against the gale, he could see that even there had once been a seal nursery, and it was so in all the other islands that he visited. Limmershin gave a long list of them, for he said that Kotick spent 5 seasons exploring, with a 4 months' rest each year at Novastoshnah, when the Holluschickie used to make fun of him and his imaginary islands. He went to the Galapagos, a horrid dry place on the equator where he was nearly baked to death. He went to the Georgia Islands, the Orkneys, Emerald Island, Little Nightingale Island, Gough's Island, Bouvet's Island, the Crossets, and even to a little speck of an island south of the Cape of Good Hope. But everywhere the people of the sea told him the same things. Seals had come to those islands once upon a time, but men had killed them all off. Even when he swam thousands of miles out of the Pacific and got to a place called Cape Corrientes, that was when he was coming back from Gough's Island, he found a few hundred mangy seals on a rock, and they told him that men came there too. That nearly broke his heart, and he headed round the Horn back to his own beaches, and on his way north he hauled out on an island full of green trees, where he found an old seal who was dying, and Kotick caught fish for him and told him all his sorrows. "Now," said Kotick, "I am going back to Novastoshnah, and if I am driven to the killing pens with the Holluschickie, I shall not care." The old seal said, "Try once more. I am the last of the lost rookery of Massafuera, and in the days when men killed us by the 100,000, there was a story on the beaches that some day a white seal would come out of the north and lead the seal people to a quiet place. I am old, and I shall never live to see that day, but others will. Try once more. And Kotick curled up his moustache, it was a beauty, and said, I am the only white seal that has ever been born on the beaches, and I am the only seal, black or white, who has ever thought of looking for new islands. This cheered him immensely, and when he came back to Nova Scotia that summer, Matka, his mother, begged him to marry and settle down, for he was no longer a holluschick, but a full-grown sea-catch, with a curly white mane on his shoulders, as heavy, as big, and as fierce as his father. Give me another season, he said. Remember, mother, it is always the seventh wave that goes farthest up the beach. Curiously enough, there was another seal who thought that she would put off marrying until the next year, and Kotick danced the fire dance with her all down Lucannon Beach the night before he set off on his last ever exploration. This time he went westward, because he had fallen on the trail of a great shoal of halibut, and he needed at least 100 pounds of fish a day to keep him in good condition. He chased them until he was tired, and then he curled himself up and went to sleep on the hollows of the ground swell that sets into Copper Island. He knew the coast perfectly well, so about midnight, when he felt himself gently bumped on a weed bed, he said, Tide's running strong tonight, and turning over under water, opened his eyes slowly and stretched. Then he jumped like a cat, for he saw huge things nosing about in the shoal water and browsing on the heavy fringes of the weeds. By the great combers of Magellan, he said beneath his moustache, who in the deep sea are these people? They were like no walrus, sea lion, seal, bear, whale, shark, fish, squid, or scallop that Kotick had ever seen before. They were between 20 and 30 feet long, and they had no hind flippers, but a shovel-like tail that looked as if it had been whittled out of wet leather. Their heads were the most foolish-looking things you ever saw, and they balanced on the ends of their tails in deep water when they weren't grazing, bowing solemnly to each other and waving their front flippers as a fat man weaves his arm. "Ahem," said Kotick. "A good sport, gentlemen." The big things answered by bowing and waving their flippers like the frog footman. When they began feeding again, Kotick saw that their upper lip was split into two pieces that they could twitch apart about a foot and bring together again, with a whole bushel of seaweed between the splits. They tucked the stuff into their mouths and chumped solemnly. "Messy style of feeding, that," said Kotick. They bowed again, and Kotick began to lose his temper. "Very good," he said. "If you do happen to have an extra joint in your front flipper, you needn't show off so. I see you bow gracefully, but I should like to know your names." The split lips moved and twitched, and the glassy green eyes stared, but they did not speak. "Well," said Kotick, "you're the only people I've ever met uglier than Seevich, and with worse manners." Then he remembered in a flash what the burgomaster gull had screamed to him when he was a little yearling at Walrus Islet, and he tumbled backward in the water, for he knew that he had found sea cow at last. The sea cows went on schlooping and grazing and chumping in the weed, and Kotick asked them questions in every language that he had picked up in his travels, and the sea people talk nearly as many languages as human beings. But the sea cows did not answer, because sea cow cannot talk. He only has 6 bones in his neck, where he ought to have 7, and they say under the sea that prevents him from speaking, even to his companions. But as you know, he has an extra joint in his foreflipper, and by waving it up and down and about, he makes what answers to a sort of clumsy telegraphic code. By daylight, Kotick's mane was standing on end, and his temper was gone where the dead crabs go. Then the sea cow began to travel northward very slowly, stopping to hold absurd bowing councils from time to time, and Kotick followed them, saying to himself, "People who are such idiots as these would have been killed long ago if they hadn't found out some safe island. And what is good enough for the sea cow is good enough for the sea catch. All the same, wish they'd hurry." It was weary work for Kotick. The herd never went more than 40 or 50 miles a day, and stopped to feed at night, and kept close to the shore all the time, while Kotick swam round them and over them and under them. But he could not hurry them up 1/2 mile. As they went farther north, they held a bowing council every few hours, and Kotick nearly bit off his moustache with impatience until he saw that they were following up a warm current of water. Then he respected them more. One night they sank through the shiny water, sank like stones, and for the first time since he had known them, began to swim quickly. Kotick followed, and the pace astonished him, for he never dreamt that sea cow was anything of a swimmer. They headed for a cliff by the shore, a cliff that ran down into deep water and plunged into a dark hole at the foot of it, 20 fathoms under the sea. It was a long, long swim, and Kotick badly wanted fresh air before he was out of the dark tunnel they led him through. "My wig!" he said when he rose, gasping and puffing, into open water at the farther end. "Whew! It was a long dive, but it was worth it." The sea cows had separated, and were browsing lazily along the edge of the finest beaches that Kotick had ever seen. There were long stretches of smooth-worn rock running for miles, exactly fitted to make seal nurseries, and there were playgrounds of hard sand sloping inland behind them, and there were rollers for seals to dance in, and long grass to roll in, and sand dunes to climb up and down, and best of all, Kotick knew by the feel of the water, which never deceives a true sea catch, that no men had ever come there. The first thing he did was to assure himself that the fishing was good, and then he swam along the beaches and counted up the delightful low sandy islands half hidden in the beautiful rolling fog. Away to the northward, out to sea, ran a line of bars and shoals and rocks that would never let a ship come within 6 miles of the beach, and between the islands and the mainland was a stretch of deep water that ran up the perpendicular cliffs, and somewhere below the cliffs was the mouth of the tunnel. "It's Nova Scotia all over again, but 10 times better," said Kotick. "Sea cow must be wiser than I thought. Men can't come down the cliffs, even if there were any men, and the shoals to seaward would knock a ship to splinters. If any place in the sea is safe, this is it." And we'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It looks like our Kotick has found the perfect place. But will it work out? Tune in tomorrow to find out more. My name's been Sascha Cooper, and this has been The White Seal from the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. Take care, everybody, and stay safe in these uncertain times. Bye-bye.